our fastest growing demographic is smaller, newer contractors and builders. Like people have been in business for a few years or less that understand communication's a problem and they never want to have that issue. So we go across all the bandwidths of residential construction. But what we do is we step in and we work like air traffic control to make sure that your homeowner's always talking to the right person. So at your company, you have people that are the project managers. You have the person that runs the scheduler. You have sales manager. You have the people that can answer these questions. The thing is we need to make sure your customer is always talking to the right one of them.
Today's episode, I sit down with the founder of a software platform that is helping residential contractors communicate better with their employees and their customers. And it's a simple problem that this software is solving, but it is not just for residential contractors. So even if you aren't in that space, this episode is going to have some valuable information for you, because the number one challenge that we struggle with as companies in general is communication. And we're going to talk today about some tips and some tricks that you can improve communication between you, your team, and your customer to deliver a better experience. Hey, Ron, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here today, Ryan.
It's funny. I feel like we just know each other. So for those of you that don't know, I just recorded an episode for Ron's podcast, which, by the way, if you don't know about the Construction Champions podcast, you need to check it out. Just make sure you're buckled up before you listen to your first episode. That's all I'm going to say, okay? Ron's a great guy, got a wealth of knowledge in residential construction. That's your background. That's your passion. That's been your history. Is that right?
That is correct.
Love it. So for thinking about these residential construction contractors, what's that mindset shift, that myth, if you will, that you want to break apart for them so that they go, wow, I can actually achieve what I want with my business if only I do what?
I think one of the biggest myths out there within the residential construction space is that we're not ready for technology, or the construction industry doesn't want to adapt technology.
Yeah, I would second that. I think construction in general, it doesn't have to be residential. Construction in general is like, hey, we've been building stuff for thousands of years. Why do we need to get on board with the way times have changed? Break that down a little bit for me. Talk to me about what kind of technology, where do you see the most resistance for these construction companies?
So I think the biggest resistance is being created by the technology itself. I think you have a lot of big tech. Silicon Valley has rolled out a lot of technologies and kind of jammed them down the throat of the industry. Everything looks good on paper. All the features, it sounds awesome, but when it goes to be implemented at the end of the day, it can't be done, or it's just not a smooth transition because the people that developed it have never been out in the field. They never wore the boots.
Yeah.
So it creates a real bottleneck, which then at the end of the day, what we hear is, oh, the construction industry doesn't want to adapt technology. And I don't necessarily believe that to be true, because what I see is if you build something for the industry that the industry can use, it solves the problem, they're lining up for it. They want that. So I think that's what we end up seeing, but that's not 100% true.
You know, it's interesting. I've got a background blue collar. That's what I grew up in. And when it comes to software, my favorite software is the one that's intuitive. Like I can open it and I know what I'm supposed to do next and I know what's coming up and it all makes sense. But we even see this in the recruiting space a lot, where the people that build the software platforms have never actually recruited before. They're a bunch of tech geniuses. I mean, they're brilliant and they create amazing software. But I'm like, yeah, that's not the word we use in the field, right? And so we see this problem with the tech companies not aligning with the construction. I've never thought about it that way, that's one of the big challenges for construction companies coming on board.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was looked at as, hey, the construction industry is this gold mine for technology if we can figure out how to get in there. not everything's all bad. There's been a lot of good that's come from it, but there's just a lot of stuff that's built so robust. And it's just like, we'll do this, let's add this on. And it just becomes overwhelming. And at the end of the day, it doesn't do what it was supposed to do very good, because there's a lot of focus on all of this other stuff. When the construction industry is just known for being good at what it does. So if we approach software that way, as just being good at what your software does, it'd be a lot better worded, because then that builder and that contractor, that home service provider, is going to be able to utilize it just like you said. It's just going to be easy, because it's here. This is what we use to do this, or this is what we use to do this. And then we create a word where all of those platforms integrate. They all talk to each other, and it just becomes easy. I think if we just looked at it from the perspective, and I say this all the time, is we should be looking at what makes that contractor or that builder's life easier. What can we do to create a world where their life's easier so they can go deliver the greatest customer experience they possibly can?
I love that customer experience. You're making sure that you're able to deliver consistently and to your standards is really what's going to drive that customer experience. When you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that this might be news to some listeners, but probably not. Construction has been struggling to bring new people into the industry. Is that fair? Hiring is one of their biggest challenges right now, has been for a long time. And when I look back at the shift that I think happened, it was in the mid 90s, late 90s, right around the time when the newspapers were like, oh, this internet thing, it's not going to hurt us. People still want to read the newspaper with their morning cup of coffee. Well, no, they don't, because people order their coffee from their car now and they're drinking it while they drive. But when that shift happened and the internet became so commonplace and technology became so easy to access, all of a sudden you have an entire generation of workers that are like, wait a minute. Do I want to go work with my hands, get dirty and hurt at the end of the day? Or do I want to learn software and technology and this new, cool, fun stuff that's exciting to talk about with my friends? And I think that at that time, construction's like, people are still going to love working with their hands. We don't need to be different. We don't need to change. And there's been this struggle for the last 20 years of construction companies be able to get on board and say, no, we need more knowledge workers. We need people that understand technology, because there's these technology platforms out there like you're talking about, but now we don't have anyone that knows how to use them. And it's just been this interesting dance that I've been seeing over the last 20 years. But I think that as more construction companies adopt technology, especially the good platforms, the more likely they are going to be able to attract good people into the trades.
And in my experience, like, this isn't just me pouring from thin air here, is we lean in on how it's always been a lot of times. And you hear that throughout the industry. And to me, that's one of the reasons we have to break through. We have to destroy the status quo. As you're growing any construction business, or even let's just back it up. If you're somebody out there that's looking to go into career fields, now, if you own a construction company, think about this. Every realm fits within construction. From lawyers to accountants to billing to sales to not just the guys with the shovels. There's all aspects of it. And as you grow, you're going to need to bring in guys that aren't just doing the work. And those guys that are doing the work should be able to grow through your company and to build out operations so you can have a more robust company. But when you look at recruiting, you have to understand you're going to be recruiting a team that's not just the production operations side of things. If you're ever going to have a fully functioning business and continue to grow it, I think we lose sight of that. And we just think, oh, I'll be able to find this customer service representative just I'll find somebody that wants to work in construction. But at the end of the day, like those roles are there. As we grow companies, we have to build a company that appeals to the top of that industry, of that role, of that customer service representative, that accountant, say that lawyer. I mean, everybody's busy. It's not necessary that they need more clients or that they're looking to make a change. But if we build a company that's appealing to them, it doesn't matter if it's construction or not. We have to build a culture where people want to come work.
Wow. I love the way you transition from we're struggling to find people to we've got to build a culture that attracts people and they'll come into the industry even if they're not just the person digging ditches, right? Because we need people. And especially in residential construction, I would imagine that almost everybody on your team is responsible for that customer experience. It's not just thinking, are they doing the work? It's, are they delivering for our customer?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it.
Stop turning away work, burning out your team, and working so hard. Learn about the proven process that businesses everywhere are using to save time, save money, and hire all the people they need. We'll train your team to implement and run this process in-house so you can grow as fast as you want. Book a call with our team at corematters.com.
What it comes down to is the customer experience.
So for those people who have listened to me for a while, they know that I'm a big fan of process and systems. And I'm a geek. I was telling Ron this before we started recording, that I'm a geek when it comes to software. My team gets so frustrated. I'm like, look at this new shiny piece of software. Let's check it out. When I was looking at some software that Ron is very passionate about, it got me thinking, if we have the right systems in place, we have the right processes in place, we can actually allow our people to do more and serve our customers better because they have a proven system that they can just walk through and says, you want to deliver the right customer experience, this is how you do it. And Ron, I know it's been a passion of yours developing software for the residential construction industry. Tell our listeners a little bit about what you've been up to and really how you see this transforming the industry when they start adopting this kind of technology that you've developed.
Before I dive into that, you said systems and stuff in place. And I know this is a show about recruiting and hiring and keeping employees around.
Mm-hmm.
I think that right there is something we need to address within the construction industry is retention, because that's as hard of a matter as hiring people. And now when you put in the right systems in place that makes your employees' life easier, what are they probably going to do? They're going to stick around a little bit longer.
Yeah.
They're going to give you more of an opportunity to show them why you should be there. Because if you're having bad customer experiences and your foreman or your managers are out having to hear from the homeowners, escalated situations, they're getting their butt chewed about something they feel like it wasn't even within their realms to be able to answer, that's not going to make people happy. It's not going to create a culture where people want to stick around. What I do is I do customer communication. After spending a decade in the industry, I dealt with my fair share of escalated customers, and I didn't want to. I wanted to figure out, how do we not have escalated customers? And I could link back 90% of that to communication breakdowns.
Yeah.
From somewhere on the team, a homeowner and somebody on the team had a communication breakdown, or that homeowner didn't get an answer to a question. So that's what led me down the road to develop NutNest, which helps homeowners and people in residential construction communicate effectively to each other.
Yeah, communication, we talk about this all the time when building teams is, I mean, companies live or die. They sink or swim based on how effective they are at communicating. And if you're not communicating well with your customers or consistently with your customers because you put it on your team and they don't have a system in place. So tell me a little bit more about NutNest. I think when I see it, I look at it as this is for that residential contractor that is in the home with the homeowner. This is not for the guy that's building brand new ground up residential houses or that kind of stuff. It's someone that needs to communicate with the homeowner on a regular basis. Did I get that right?
Yeah. Like if you're building out subdivisions, we're probably not the platform for you. If you're a builder that's building like custom homes and you have that in customer, we would be a platform you could use. We're really that contractor, builder, home service provider to the customer. So it's a customer facing platform.
So what are some of the things that you've seen? And I would imagine that we'll be able to tie this into how NutNest helps. What are some of the biggest challenges contractors have when communicating with the customer? And then how does systems or software like NutNest, how does it help solve that problem?
So communication is the number one customer complaint. You never hear that, hey, they got, not that you never, very rarely will you hear, oh, I just didn't like the guys, it was the crew, they did this. It's always, man, the work was awesome, but their communication sucked.
Mhm.
And what ends up happening is in the residential construction space, a lot of times either that sales rep or that lead builder that comes out to the house and gets everything set up, that's that point of contact for the homeowner. Once that becomes a project and we move into the actual installation of the building or the renovation, that person's no longer involved. But that's the only number that homeowner has. So when that homeowner calls, say the sales rep, and that sales rep's like, man, sorry, I'm not the guy. I don't have the answer. Or they don't answer the phone because they're on to the next project.
Sure.
That homeowner starts to click. Starts to be, I say at residential construction is one of the spaces where stuff can go 0 to 5 alarm fire within hours. So that homeowner starts to look at this as, oh, well, I haven't heard back. They're supposed to be out here. They got half my money up front. What exactly is going on? So you start to create this environment where the homeowner doesn't know. And it's not because we want to be bad communicators. It's because we don't have the systems and processes in place to be good communicators. And it becomes a fail point, or they call the office and they get Mary the receptionist. Well, Mary the receptionist doesn't have the answers to everything. All she can really do is just drop it into somebody's voicemail that she thinks can answer the question. Now, if that person gets that voicemail and they're not the person, they're probably continuing on with their day and figuring it will all work itself out. So it's not that we want to be bad communicators. We're not proactive enough to be the great communicators that we can be.
I think it's interesting. Like we're talking about residential construction right now, but it doesn't matter what industry you're in. You can be in healthcare, right?
No,
Or be a
not
tech
at all.
company. And what you're talking about is spot on. It's not that we don't want to, it's just we don't have the process in place. It's much harder to do. And one of the things I've learned about being in the construction space for a long time is that a lot of people in the construction space, they love to build great things. They love to be working with their hands. But a lot of times these guys, I'm going to say they're more introverted, right? They're not the lives of the party where they want to go talk to everybody and they're hanging out and they're having fun. Now they'll do that after hours, but I don't see a lot of carpenters walking up to the homeowner and be like, how was your weekend? It's just not normal for them, right? And so having a system in place that can do the communication for them can be really, really helpful. I think that transcends industries, Ron, but I love that you're focused on these residential contractors because a lot of them are pretty small in size, right? They're not the big corporate enterprises. They usually run like a family. And so they don't always spend they're not intentional about putting these systems in place. And NutNest does a lot of this for them. Is that right?
Yeah. So, our fastest growing demographic is smaller, newer contractors and builders. Like people have been in business for a few years or less that understand communication's a problem and they never want to have that issue. So we go across all the bandwidths of residential construction. But what we do is we step in and we work like air traffic control to make sure that your homeowner's always talking to the right person. So at your company, you have people that are the project managers. You have the person that runs the scheduler. You have that sales manager. You have the people that can answer these questions. The thing is we need to make sure your customer is always talking to the right one of them. You don't want somebody asking a sales question to your project manager. That you're going to get two completely different answers.
Yeah.
So what we do is the homeowner downloads the NutNest app. It's completely free for them to be on there. And that is where all communication goes through. So when we're talking, what does it take to be a great communicator? One is systems. You have to have systems in place. Two, you have to have a singular point of communication that the homeowner and your team understands. This is where we're communicating. So NutNest provides that. We get everything in one place, all your documents, all your pictures, and all your communication with that customer, and we organize it per project. And then you have your guys or ladies that are in charge of the channels. So when that homeowner asks a scheduling question, they're actually talking to the person that's in charge of that schedule, and they're getting an answer. Or when it's a project management question. And that right there creates a singular place, so there's no confusion. And then for the contractor, we're completely web-based, so you can access it from tablets to laptops, desktops to phones, wherever that employee's at, to be able to access it in real time.
That's fantastic. I know that you've got a very niche target market for NutNest residential contractors. I think that the principles that we're talking about, though, apply, like I said before, to all industries. And really breaking down the two things that I heard you say was, one, make sure you have a system that helps manage communication. By the way, system does not always mean software, right? A system is a collection of processes.
So that's why I say that's number one, is you have to have some systems. You have to have processes, how you communicate, what you do before you have a NutNest. You want to, those go hand in hand, because we want to set people up to win with communication here. We don't want to set them up to fail. I want it to be a tool that provides a resource so people can go be great at communication and not have to try. So if we set up those systems, you implement a NutNest, a singular point of communication for your team, now you're getting somewhere. You have some systems, you have a software you're using.
That's great. And then the second thing that really stood out to me is make sure that when you build your systems, that the people that are responsible, that have the information, the ones that are responsible for communicating the information, that when the customer does have a question or someone on the team does have a question, that it gets routed to the right person. And that's really critical too, because as you talked about, poor little Mary, she wants to help you with the whole company and do what she can to help, but she doesn't have the information. She can't help the customer. And so making sure that when you do build a system, that you are routing things to the appropriate people, the ones that have the information. Did I get that right?
Yep, absolutely.
It's so crazy to me how much we can learn just about how to build an effective business just by talking to someone who's developing a program to help business owners build an effective business. Like the principles, like, I could see you someday just rebranding it and say, okay, now we're going to work with subcontractors, because what you're talking about doing, it doesn't matter. It's the same across all these industries. You know, Ron, we talked about NutNest. By the way, if you spell it the way you think it's spelled, you might miss it. So Ron, I want you to tell our listeners how they learn about NutNest. We'll have this in the show notes, so no worries there. But if people want to learn more, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, it's NUTTNEST.com. You can go right on there. You can find me on LinkedIn, at any social media. I'm on every possible outlet out there.
How do they find out about your podcast?
You can go to constructionchampionspodcast.com, YouTube, and anywhere where you listen to podcasts. It's out there.
Awesome. Hey, Ron, thank you so much. Ton of valuable insight here into communications, how to build effective teams, and really deliver that amazing customer experience. Thank you for being on the show today.
Hey, thank you for having me. I have enjoyed it.